we did have this moment when we started Chatham Rabbits where it was like, okay, we're musicians and we have to be cool. And then we tried that and we were like, okay, this is so stressful. It's not us. We're not the cool kids on the block. Like, we just need to be ourselves. And if people like that, then great. And so we just started really being kind of our goofy selves.
Hello and welcome to Art Restart, where we learn from artists who, wherever they work, whatever they make, are shaking up the status quo in their fields and in their communities. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, the producer and editor of this podcast, which is brought to you by the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. In this episode, we'll be speaking with music and life partners Sarah and Austin McCombie, who together comprise the band Chatham Rabbits. The year 2020 was almost a disaster for the duo. They had just made their biggest financial investment in their band, namely the purchase of a tour van, and were getting ready to take it out on tour to promote their second album when the pandemic hit and all their bookings vanished. I said almost a disaster because what Austin and Sarah did next exemplifies their resourcefulness, generosity, and innovative spirit. They installed solar panels on top of the van to power a sound system, hitched a flatbed trailer to their new vehicle, and played free concerts in scores of neighborhoods around North Carolina. They called it the Stay at Home Tour. In the middle of lockdown, when the prospect of hearing live music seemed years away, you could email or DM Chatham Rabbits a request, and chances are they'd show up on your street and give you and your neighbors a joyful concert. Happily, their professional life has resumed at full tilt. They recently completed their third album, titled Be Real With Me, which is scheduled for release on Valentine's Day 2025. Let's listen to one of its tracks, titled Matador.
Be real with me, take your time. This is just a card that needs dealing with. I'm trying to hold it together, that's all. And bite my tongue so I don't talk. Well, I had more red flags than a matador. I look back now, I see what for. I lit myself on fire to keep us warm.
Chatham Rabbits will spend February and March of 2025 performing in venues all over the country. You'll find a link to their tour dates in the show notes. Sarah and Austin spoke to me from their farm in Guilford County, North Carolina. I started off by asking them about their commitment to community building through their music, which is so apparent in the stay-at-home tour. Was it always crucial to them? And if so, how did they cultivate it?
It has been a pillar of Chatham Rabbits. I mean, we just are so thankful for the fan base that and like community that is built around Chatham Rabbits. And like, it is just such a symbiotic relationship between us and our fans, and like them giving to us and us giving back and vice versa. And it's just grown super, super naturally. I think because we came at this music thing a little bit later after the other jobs, like we were a little, I don't know, naive in some ways and wide-eyed and like not, we didn't have a chip on our shoulder and like the gruffness and like the ruggedness that sometimes comes with being a touring musician. Because I mean, we do have edges now because we've been worn down, you know, through COVID and heavy touring, like stuff has gotten to us. But in the beginning, like we were just so like open armed, and that allowed us to meet so many people, do the stay at home tour, which took us to 194 neighborhoods in North Carolina in 2020 and 2021, which is bananas. I know, it's like insane. Yeah, it's just community is a huge, huge part of the Chatham Rabbit story. Austin, do you want to add on to that?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I just think that Sarah and I feel so grateful for every single person that comes to see us. And we did have this moment when we started Chatham Rabbits where it was like, okay, we're musicians and we have to be cool. And then we tried that. And we were like, okay, this is so stressful. It's not us. We're not the cool kids on the block. Like, we just need to be ourselves. And if people like that, then great. And so we just started really being kind of our goofy selves. And what we realized is like that connected with the people, even more. And so it's always been more than about the music with us. And I think even early on, we got some advice that like, hey, you guys need to make this about the music and not bring so much of yourselves into it. And I'm really glad we didn't take that advice, because I think it works for some people, but for us, it's really been like our whole story, our partnership, our farm, our lives, every single thing is an ingredient in making somebody a Chatham Rabbits fan.
Mm-hmm. I'll also say that like one of the things that has continued to be so important to us, and like I don't think we've ever missed a show doing this, but we always, and for the foreseeable future, like we will come out after we play, come out to the merch table or like, to the lobby or whatever and talk to people. And doing that night after night and like shaking hands and hugging people, like you get so much more connected into what your fans want out of your show. And like Austin and I both want when people like leave a Chatham Rabbits show, like for people to just walk out of there like a little bit lighter, a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more wholehearted than when they stepped in the theater. So it's just really cool. Like when you actually get up close to people, the connection is inevitable.
Now, this podcast was born out of the pandemic and it's called Art Restart, because the pandemic made it clear that so many existing systems in the art world needed to be completely reinvented, because the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
showed us how vulnerable artists are. So I wonder, what did both of you learn from the pandemic and from the stay at home tour? And how did that experience, that year, 2 years, affect your music making?
I think for me, and I'm curious to hear what Sarah says, but I think for me, one thing it did was it really solidified the notion that like it's more than just about the music. And the reason why I say that is because I remember the first couple of neighborhoods that we went to, it was like straight after like the couple months of like serious lockdown. Like there was a time when I was like, COVID was a thing. It was like trickling in, all that. And then there was like the big lockdown that happened. And so we started sort of right after that. And I remember going to these neighborhoods and like we're on the trailer, we're playing, and we're watching people coming out of their houses and they're seeing their neighbors for the first time in like months. And they're like listening to the music, which is cool, but they're also like waving to their neighbors and they're just like, oh my gosh, you guys were the reason why we came outside and communed with our neighborhood again. And I
Wow.
was like, that was really cool. And it just was a good reminder. It's like, hey, our music is great and it is about the music, but it's also like we are really just like a reason for people to be connected to each other and to something, to our art. It was really cool to kind of see that in its most extreme form with the stay at home tour, because that happens at our shows, but like when someone's so starved for human connection like that, and then you show up in their neighborhood, play some music, and it gives them a reason to connect, like that is very special.
Sarah, what about you?
I love that Austin said that, and I 100% agree. Like, I think that we are just a vehicle, or our music is a vehicle. Our shows are a vehicle for people to get together and enjoy time with one another. But my answer, honestly, to your question, Pierre, is so much more cynical because I've realized post pandemic, again, to your point, like just how fragile being an artist is. And I've realized like how much more we have to push people to get out of their comfort zones, their house, their routines to go and experience a live show. And there's never a time when someone is like, oh, I really wish I hadn't gone out to see live music tonight. Like, it's like going to the gym. You're not going to be like, oh, I feel terrible after I just walked for 30 minutes or whatever you did, but it's like getting people up off the couch or out of their house, out of their routines to go experience live music has become a lot more difficult in the time post COVID. And so it's just, as artists, like, we're trying to figure out how to inspire people, motivate people, and like get the word out that live shows are still happening.
I would also agree with that. As positive as my answer was, that is also true.
It means in a way you have to do even more heavy lifting.
Yes. And like,
your fans out.
Yeah. And it's like, it leaves less time for the actual like creating of the art, or like, being able to carefully plan tours, because people are not buying tickets in advance. So we have no concept of if like, okay, do we have fans in Boston right now? Because no one's buying tickets. But then inevitably we'll show up, we'll play the show, and people will buy stuff at the door, and it will be great. But it's the time post-COVID has just definitely changed. So not to be a Debbie Downer, but that is just a reality, I think.
I'll come back around again about what you'd like to see change in your industry. But right now I'd love to talk about Be Real With Me, your new album. Growing up in college, I watched a lot of VHS Behind the Music videos, which always showed there was always a point when a band would kind of have a midlife crisis and things would fall apart. And what I love about this album is it's actually the pre-midlife crisis album that everybody should make. It's the Looking in the Mirror album. The coming to grips with who you are. So I'd love for you to talk. I mean, certainly the music does that on its own, but I know you have a farm you love, which takes a lot of work. I think you've been talking about growing your family, but musicians make their living on the road generally, which is really, really tough for parents. So I'm wondering about where you find yourselves in your careers now and what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, this is a topic that I'm just constantly thinking about, journaling about, talking about. This album, Be Real With Me, that's coming out on February 14th of 2025. Yeah, it's the Looking in the Mirror album. It's all about like reassessing, coming to grips with who we are, trying to figure out next steps, reconciling past relationships, and just like getting our act together. And you're completely right. We have this beautiful farm where we live in Guilford County, North Carolina. It's been in my family for almost 300 years, and we love living here, love keeping the animals and all of that. But it's a ton of work on top of the touring. And as you said, like, it's been a very important thing to me since I can remember. Like, I've always wanted to be a mom. And the reality is, like, it's very expensive to be a parent right now, and to hire a nanny to go on the road with us 24/7 is like a financial undertaking that is completely overwhelming. So yeah, these are just all things that I don't have answers to, but things that Austin and I both think about a lot and wrote about a lot in this record.
You must have colleagues who are parents and are in the industry. What are you hearing from them about how to do it and about things that really should be changed in the industry to make it easier for folks like you to keep dreaming their artistic dreams and their family dreams?
Well, one of my major role models and mentors is Emily France from the band Watch House. And, she's a mom of two, has accomplished so much in her career as an artist, but also as a businesswoman. And I've had some really long conversations with her about motherhood on the road. A couple of things that come up in conversations, not just with her, but in the industry in general, and things that I have talked about with others is, just down to like the simple notion of merch cuts at venues. A lot of times venues take 15 to up to 30% of the merch sales from an artist. And like that money, that percentage is like hugely important and could be put towards, hiring a nanny to go on the road with you and that sort of thing. Like those are just like little things that could definitely be shifted in the industry to help women or people be able to have this goal of having a family on the road. But also, I could get into the whole like conversation of like the monopolizing of Ticketmaster and Live Nation and all of that mess. But there's just like so many roadblocks put up against like independent artists that it just, yeah, it's just like overly complicates and takes away from artists' ability to make money.
Sarah, in the documentary, you mentioned in one of the episodes that you hardly ever get to play with other women. Just before the interview, I was talking with Austin, who says later today you're giving a tour to a group of women in Americana.
Yeah. I'm doing a takeover of the Women of Americana Instagram account. It's a pretty huge Instagram account, and so I'm taking them throughout my day, and yeah, hopefully that'll be a cool new way to meet some more women in the industry.
So yeah, I want to ask you about what it's like for you, because all of your, as far as I can tell, all of your collaborators are male, and I just love to know what you're hearing from your women colleagues about making space for themselves in roots and Americana music.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you do not make space for yourself, no one's going to do it for you. That is definitely what I've learned. Like, I am oftentimes the only woman in a lot of settings, on stage or at folk music, Americana conferences, whatever. And I have to kind of weasel my way in there to the old boys club and belly up to the bar myself. I don't know. It makes it all the more refreshing when I do get to be around women like Shannon Whitworth, who I got to play with in the documentary, and some women that I've already, mentioned, Emily France, but also a dear friend, Alexa Rose, who is a singer-songwriter from Asheville that I just love and have really enjoyed connecting with. There are so many women making music and right now in this space, but like, yeah, it does seem like backing bands, management agencies, like it's very, very male dominated. Yeah, I don't know. I really need to like crystallize this a little bit more, but I will say that I know for a fact that if you don't insert yourself and make yourself known, like no one else is going to like do it for you.
Ooh, that's hard. I mean, as Austin said, you have a personality where you're not afraid of inserting yourself. That's a real challenge for a woman performer who does not have that quality.
It is. And that's why like women need to take care of other women. Like we need to see, oh, okay, this is not an area that they shine in. And so I'm going to jump in here and introduce myself and bring her along, or I'm going to, be an includer, like I'm really obsessed with this idea of like, always put your shopping cart back, and always like if you see somebody by themselves or sitting alone, whatever, like talk to them, make the conversation. And we really try to do that with bands that we get placed with at festivals or an opener that we've never met before. Like just be an includer. It goes such a long way.
I think something that's very rarely talked about in the music world is that internally between bands and artists, there can be a lot of sort of competition, and like there's support as well. But like it is important, I think, as an artist to try to break that mold. And whether it's men, women, whatever genre, like everybody that's an artist, like we've always believed that, rising tides raise all ships. And like if something is going really, really well for a band in the Triangle that's doing something similar to what we're doing, then that means that we have the opportunity to step right in there and do well with them. That's kind of our mentality. It's less of a or situation and a lot more of an and situation.
Is there anything you've learned about your songwriting and musicianship, or actually the business side of things, that you wish you'd known years earlier?
I wish that I would just know that there are going to be seasons where creativity is going to, and words and melodies are going to come to you more easily, or come to me more easily in the moment, and they're just going to flow and it's going to work. And there might be weeks or months or even years in between those spurts, but it will happen. and that I don't need to worry and fixate on that. And then the other thing I would say is I am so glad that there is so much that we didn't know, because being naive and oblivious allows you to not understand like the way things should be, and totally like turn it on its head and surprise people, surprise yourself, and go about things in an unorthodox way. And you're not even trying to, you're just trying to be like an earnest person. So that would be my answer.
I think that is an incredible answer. I'm sitting down here in a different room, nodding my head along. Like, that's so true. Like, I think if we knew what we knew now, we wouldn't be in this room doing this right now. And it's not because we wouldn't have wanted to. I think we would have gotten in our own way a lot. Like, Sarah, when we started this, just picking up the phone and calling people like out of the blue, it's like she was treating it almost like a sales job. And we didn't know any better. Like, we didn't know if you were supposed to have somebody
I didn't know
representing
that
you to
wasn't
reach out.
cool.
Yeah, like we didn't know anything. Like, we truly didn't. And it was just so helpful, because guess what? A lot of people, even managers and people that have been in the industry a long time, they don't know as much as they think they know either, because this career, this job, there's so few structural like sort of boundaries. Like, this is a business that has no pricing model. This is a business where like, what does it really mean to price your music? Like, should we be getting paid $500 or $50,000 versus some other band? Like, who even knows? It's like, it's all based on feelings. It's like there's really no structure to any of it. And so I think
This is actually crazy.
yeah, it is, and like, just another like little kind of like interesting industry factor. So like, this is just an example of many things that are like this, but like, kind of the go-to model for management for a band right now is like, a manager normally makes between 10 to 20% of gross revenue for the band. That's normally like, that's a standard for how it works. And if you think about that for any other industry, it would be like mind blowing. Like, if you show up to if Coca-Cola is looking for a new CEO, and they say, okay, we're looking for a new CEO. The pay structure is this CEO gets paid 15% of Coca-Cola's gross revenue, and they have absolutely zero accountabilities for expenses. They have no like tangible objectives that they have to report to the board that they did to help Coca-Cola. They're just this kind of ambiguous figure that sort of is running Coca-Cola, and they're making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't make any sense in any other industry, but in music, there's these things that are true that just seem so odd for someone like me who came from financial planning, and trying to hold people in the industry accountable for the oddities that are involved. It's like playing whack-a-mole, and the moles are just constantly going underground, and you're just like, nobody can answer anything. This is wild.
But are you getting a sense that artists like you are hitting the mallet more successfully on the moles? Like,
I think one thing that is changing or like becoming more prevalent right now is that artists seem to be, in our experience, sharing more information, like what they're getting paid for certain gigs, how they were treated at certain venues, and like kind of behind the scenes being our own little union. And I think that's really important. So we don't get taken advantage of. And like Austin said, like the cost or the fees for things are so like arbitrary and so bizarre, like how the structure is. And I think when artists talk about it, we make sure that, okay, this festival we're being fairly compensated here. We're not here, whatever. So I think that's really cool.
Sharing that information is a little bit of the rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
Metaphor that Austin was talking about, right? That putting an end to the competition, right?
Totally.
I love that. Lastly, you've got a big jam-packed tour scheduled for February and March. Would each of you name the one item in your suitcase or your van that can make all the difference on a long tour?
I'll go first. Austin, do you know what I'm going to say?
Yes, I know exactly what you're going to say. How about we answer for each other?
Okay.
Oh yeah, I like that. Answer for each. Yes.
Okay,
All right,
Austin, you
Sarah
answer for
cannot-
me.
Sarah could not survive, even in the dead of summer, without her electric blanket.
Yes.
Even in North Carolina summer?
I'm telling you, that girl wears that she curls up with that electric blanket on every tour for like most of the time she's in the bus. We have a solar powered electric generator just to run her freaking electric blanket.
I love that thing. It's like it's my comfort, and I just get under that and disassociate after a show, and it's just really great. And I would say, Austin, I would say something that you cannot live without on tour are your Crocs, because when you drive the bus, you got to have your comfy shoes.
Yeah, totally. I have to have my driving shoes.
Driving shoes. People used to wear driving gloves. You got driving shoes. That's very cool.
Oh yeah,
my gosh,
Crocs, man.
This is what we say when we're like, we're not cool musicians. This is just who we are. We got our electric blanket and our Crocs. So
If you'd like to read a longer version of this interview, please just head to uncsa.edu/artrestart. Word of mouth is the main way new listeners find our podcast. So if you enjoyed this or any of our interviews with amazing artists, won't you please share the episode with a friend? Our theme music is by Shanghai Restoration Project. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, and on behalf of the Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, thank you for listening.